Black billionaire girl seat stolen by white passenger. Seconds later, flight is grounded. She was only 11 and already a CEO. But when a grown man stole her first-class seat and mocked her for being a child, the flight crew didn't realize who she really was. What happened next grounded the entire flight and shook the nation. Watch until the end. This isn't just about a seat. It's about standing up when the world tells you to sit down. The sun was barely up when Angela Brooks pulled into the private terminal at Newark Liberty Airport. Her daughter, 11-year-old Madison Brooks, adjusted her glasses and glanced out the window. It was early, but Madison was already wide awake, her brain buzzing with anticipation for the tech conference in Los Angeles, where she'd be delivering the keynote address. Madison wasn't your average preteen. At just 11, she was the CEO of SparkMind, a youth-oriented education tech company she inherited after her father's sudden passing. Since then, Madison had transformed the company into a multimillion-dollar empire focused on youth innovation. Though Angela managed the back end, Madison was the public face. Confident, brilliant, and humble. "Let's get you settled, superstar," Angela said with a warm smile as they exited the car. Inside the terminal, everything was quiet and sleek. Madison preferred to fly commercial like a regular person, but after a long string of delays and fanfare in public airports, Angela booked her first-class seats on a major airline to keep things smooth. They boarded early, with Madison leading the way down the jet bridge. She looked polished in her navy blazer and slacks, her natural curls tied back neatly. As she stepped into the cabin, a tall white man in his mid-40s was already slouched in seat 1A, her seat. Madison paused. "Excuse me, sir," she said gently. "I think you're in my seat." The man looked up, barely glancing at her. "Doubt it," he muttered, waving her off with one hand while staying glued to his phone. Angela caught up, immediately sensing the tension. "What's going on, Maddie?" "He's in my seat," Madison replied, lifting her boarding pass to show her mom. Angela looked toward the flight attendant, a young woman named Carrie, who was checking overhead bins nearby. "Ma'am, could you please verify seat 1A? My daughter's ticket says that's her assigned seat." Carrie approached, glancing at the ticket. "Yes, 1A is correct," she said professionally. She turned to the man. "Sir, I'm going to need to see your boarding pass, please." The man rolled his eyes and finally handed it over. "I'm supposed to be up here," he said defensively. "Maybe she's in the wrong section." Carrie checked it, then frowned. "Actually, sir, your assigned seat is 24B, back in economy." "What?" he snapped. "You're telling me I have to give up this seat to a kid?" Before Carrie could respond, murmurs began trickling in from other passengers. A few had noticed the confrontation, phones slowly rising in hands. Angela stayed calm. "Sir, you're not giving up anything. You're sitting in someone else's seat. You weren't assigned here." The man stood, towering over Madison with a smug grin. "You think just because she's wearing a blazer and has an attitude, she deserves this seat more than I do?" Madison looked him in the eye and replied coolly, "No, I think I deserve it because I paid for it, like everyone else." The cabin went quiet. Then the pilot's voice crackled overhead. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to a developing situation on board, we will be holding at the gate for a moment. Please remain seated." Angela's eyes narrowed. The hum of whispers and shifting bodies filled the cabin as the plane stayed locked at the gate. Passengers were now fully alert, some craning their necks to get a better look at the scene unfolding in first class. The man, clearly irritated, hadn't moved from the aisle. "I'm not going to sit in the back like some second-rate customer," he barked. "This is ridiculous. That seat was empty when I got here." Carrie, the flight attendant, kept her voice calm but firm. "Sir, regardless of when you boarded, that seat was assigned to this passenger. If you refuse to comply, I will have to notify the captain again, and we may need to remove you from the flight." "You people are unbelievable," the man muttered, his eyes flicking toward Madison and Angela. "Entitled and loud for no reason." Angela stepped forward. "Sir, you've said enough." Madison, sitting silently in the seat now vacated by the man, kept her hands in her lap. She could feel her heart pounding, but her face remained composed. Then came the click of the cockpit door. The captain himself emerged, an older man with a silver beard and a presence that instantly hushed the cabin. "Is there a problem here?" Carrie gestured toward the man. "Passenger in 24B occupied 1A and is refusing to return to his seat." The captain looked at the man. "Sir, you have two options. Return to your assigned seat immediately, or exit the aircraft. We cannot, and will not, take off under these conditions." The man's bravado wavered for a moment, but he doubled down. "I'm not going anywhere. This little drama queen's just putting on a show." That was it. Angela reached into her designer tote bag and pulled out a sleek leather folder. "Captain, before this goes any further, I think you should know who my daughter is." She handed him a card and a glossy printout. The captain's eyes skimmed the content. A flicker of recognition crossed his face. "Madison Brooks, SparkMind CEO." Several heads turned. "She's 11. The man scoffed. "What kind of joke? She's also on Forbes 30 Under 30, owns a patent portfolio that would make your head spin, and more importantly, she bought this seat legally," Angela said coldly. The captain straightened. "Understood. Carrie, please alert ground security." The man laughed nervously. "Oh, come on. You're going to call security over this." "No, sir," the captain said, stepping aside. "You're going to wait here while they come get you." Madison turned her head to the window. She wasn't here to win arguments. She just wanted to fly in peace. Moments later, two security officers stepped on board. They approached without a word, gesturing for the man to follow. He argued, but he was cornered now. As he was escorted off, several passengers began clapping quietly. Madison felt Angela squeeze her hand. But just as things seemed to calm down, the captain leaned toward Carrie and said something that made her freeze. She picked up the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to new developments, this flight is being temporarily grounded. Please remain in your seats." Angela and Madison exchanged a glance. This wasn't over. The cabin buzzed with a mix of curiosity and frustration as passengers settled back into their seats. The sudden grounding had caught everyone off guard. Phones lit up with calls and messages. Some passengers paced the aisles while others whispered in small groups. Madison stayed seated, her gaze steady but thoughtful. Angela sat beside her, her face a mask of calm professionalism that belied the storm brewing beneath. Minutes later, two men in sharp suits and security badges boarded the plane. They moved quickly, nodding to the captain and flight crew before making their way toward the front. The lead agent introduced himself to Angela and Madison. "Ms. Brooks, we need to speak with you about an incident involving the man who was occupying your seat." Angela nodded. "Of course. What's going on?" The agent cleared his throat. "That individual is currently under investigation for attempting to use fraudulent identification to access first-class seating." Madison's eyes widened, but she remained composed. "Fraudulent ID? So he wasn't really assigned that seat?" "No, ma'am. In fact, we have reason to believe he has a history of disruptive behavior on flights and may pose a safety risk." The gravity of the situation settled over them. "Thank you for your cooperation," the agent said. "We're conducting a thorough investigation and will keep you informed." After the agents left, Angela turned to Madison. "You stayed calm, even when things got tough. I'm proud of you." Madison gave a small smile. "I didn't want to make things worse." Over the next hour, the airline worked closely with law enforcement officials. Passengers were kept informed but encouraged to remain patient. Meanwhile, the man who had taken Madison's seat was held in a secure area at the airport, his protests muffled by the seriousness of the situation. Back on the plane, whispers grew about Madison's identity. Some passengers pulled out their phones, sharing what little they knew, while others expressed admiration for the young CEO who had stood her ground. Angela checked Madison's phone and smiled at the flood of messages. Friends, business contacts, even strangers, praising her poise. But Madison was already thinking beyond the incident. "This is bigger than just a seat on a plane," she said softly. Angela nodded. "You're right. It's about standing up for what's right, no matter how small the situation may seem." The pilot's voice came over the intercom again. "We're awaiting clearance from authorities before proceeding. Thank you for your patience." As the plane remained grounded, Madison stared out the window at the runway. The day had started like any other, but it was becoming a turning point, a test of resilience and integrity. The hum of the plane's engines gradually filled the cabin again as the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have received clearance from authorities. We will be departing shortly. Thank you for your patience." A wave of relief swept through the passengers. Some stretched and whispered excitedly, eager to resume their journeys. Madison settled deeper into her seat, her heart still pounding from the earlier tension. Angela reached over and gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. "You did great today," Angela said softly. Madison nodded but looked out the window, lost in thought. The incident was more than just a test of her composure. It was a lesson in courage and standing up for herself. As the plane lifted off, the bright morning sun cast golden light across the clouds below. Suddenly, a gentle tap on Madison's shoulder broke her reverie. It was Carrie, the flight attendant from earlier. "I just wanted to say, you were amazing back there," she said quietly. "Not many people could have handled that as gracefully as you did." Madison smiled, appreciating the kindness. "Thank you," she replied. "It wasn't easy, but I knew I had to stand my ground." Carrie nodded. "Sometimes people see a kid and think they can push them around. You showed everyone that age doesn't define strength." The rest of the flight passed smoothly. Passengers who had witnessed the dispute offered quiet words of encouragement to Madison and Angela whenever they crossed paths. Madison noticed something else, a shift in how people looked at her. Gone was the disbelief or dismissiveness. Instead, there was respect. After landing in Los Angeles, Madison and Angela collected their bags and headed toward the exit. Before they left, a middle-aged man approached them. "Miss Brooks," he said, extending a hand, "I'm David Langston, a board member of SparkMind's parent company. I saw the footage of what happened on the flight. I just wanted to say, your poise and courage were inspiring." Madison shook his hand, a flush of pride warming her cheeks. "Thank you, Mr. Langston. It means a lot." As they stepped outside into the warm California air, Madison felt ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead, not just in business, but in life. Because sometimes the hardest battles come when you least expect them, and how you face them defines who you truly are. Back at her sleek Los Angeles hotel suite, Madison sat quietly on the balcony overlooking the city skyline. Her phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, texts, emails, social media alerts. The video of her confrontation on the plane had gone viral overnight. Friends, fans, and even strangers from across the country were sharing clips of her calm yet assertive stance against the entitled passenger. Comments flooded in praising her maturity, resilience, and grace. Angela joined her, sipping coffee. "Seems like your story is making waves." Madison chuckled softly. "I never expected this. It's just me standing up for my seat." "But that's exactly why people are listening," Angela said. "Because you stood firm in the face of disrespect, and you did it with dignity." The next morning, Madison was contacted by several media outlets requesting interviews. One popular morning news show wanted her to speak live about the experience. Though nervous, Madison agreed. She knew this was an opportunity to inspire others, especially young people, to stand up for themselves respectfully. During the interview, she explained, "It's not about the seat or the status. It's about respect. Everyone deserves to be treated fairly, no matter their age or background." Her words resonated with viewers. Soon after, advocacy groups reached out, inviting Madison to speak at events promoting equality and respect in public spaces. Meanwhile, the airline issued a statement confirming they were reviewing policies to prevent future seat disputes and ensuring staff were trained to handle such situations better. Madison's story was sparking conversations about entitlement, respect, and standing up to injustice in everyday life. Yet, amidst the attention and praise, Madison remained humble. She told Angela one evening, "This incident taught me more than I expected. Sometimes, the smallest moments can become the biggest lessons." Angela smiled warmly. "And you turned a tough situation into a powerful message. That's something to be proud of." Madison's phone lit up again, this time with a message from the airline CEO, requesting a meeting. It seemed her journey had taken a new direction, and Madison was ready to see where it would lead. A week later, Madison sat in a sleek conference room inside the headquarters of Horizon Airlines, the very company her plane incident had involved. Across the table sat the airline's CEO, Jonathan Pierce, a man known for his sharp mind and public relations savvy. "Madison," Jonathan began, "I want to personally apologize for what happened on your flight. The behavior you endured is unacceptable, and we're committed to making changes." Madison nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Pierce. It wasn't just about me. It was about respect, something everyone deserves." Jonathan smiled, impressed by her poise. "Exactly. That's why I'd like to invite you to partner with us on a new initiative, promoting passenger respect and conflict resolution training across our entire staff." Madison's eyes lit up. "I would be honored. It's important to create safe and respectful spaces for all travelers." Over the next few weeks, Madison collaborated closely with the airline team. They developed training modules, passenger awareness campaigns, and protocols to handle disputes fairly and swiftly. She also helped create educational content aimed at young travelers, encouraging them to stand up for their rights with confidence and grace. Meanwhile, the airline publicly announced the new program, receiving praise from customers and advocacy groups alike. For Madison, the partnership was more than just a project, it was a mission. She began speaking at schools and youth centers, sharing her story and empowering others to face challenges head-on. Angela watched proudly as her daughter's impact grew beyond the business world. One afternoon, as they reviewed plans for an upcoming event, Angela said, "You're turning adversity into leadership. That's a rare gift." Madison smiled, feeling a deep sense of purpose. From a seat dispute on a plane to leading a movement for change, her journey had transformed in ways she never imagined. And she was just getting started. The weeks following Madison's partnership with Horizon Airlines were a whirlwind of activity. Invitations poured in for her to speak at conferences, schools, and civic events. The young CEO was no longer just a business prodigy. She had become a symbol of courage and dignity in the face of adversity. On a bright morning in Washington, D.C., Madison found herself standing before a congressional committee. The room was filled with lawmakers, airline executives, and journalists. Cameras flashed as she took her seat at the podium, her calm gaze scanning the room. The chairman of the committee, a stern but fair woman named Senator Delgado, opened the hearing. "Ms. Brooks, thank you for joining us today. Your experience has highlighted significant concerns about passenger rights and airline accountability. We look forward to your insights." Madison nodded. "Thank you, Senator. It's an honor to be here." She took a deep breath and began. "Flying should be safe, respectful, and accessible for everyone. Unfortunately, incidents like the one I experienced happen all too often, whether it's seat disputes, discrimination, or mistreatment by staff or other passengers." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. Age, race, or status should never determine how someone is treated on a plane. What I want to see is a commitment to clear policies, staff training, and mechanisms that empower passengers to report problems without fear. Throughout her testimony, Madison spoke with clarity and passion, emphasizing respect and fairness over confrontation. She shared stories of young people who had faced discrimination or intimidation during travel and stressed the importance of education and prevention. Lawmakers listened intently, some nodding in agreement. After the session, several committee members approached Madison, praising her eloquence and maturity. Senator Delgado smiled warmly. "You make a compelling case, Ms. Brooks. Your leadership is exactly what we need to drive meaningful reform." Back in her hotel room that evening, Madison reflected on the day. The path from a tense-seat dispute to influencing national policy was surreal but deeply fulfilling. Angela called. "You were incredible today. Proud doesn't even begin to cover it." Madison smiled, feeling the weight of responsibility settle alongside her excitement. But her work was far from over. In the days that followed, airlines announced new initiatives inspired by Madison's testimony: enhanced training programs, clearer passenger rights guidelines, and dedicated support hotlines. Madison's social media platforms buzzed with messages from young people thanking her for giving them hope and courage. She realized her voice had grown stronger, not just for herself but for countless others who might one day face similar challenges. Despite the growing spotlight, Madison stayed grounded. She continued running SparkMind, balancing business demands with her advocacy work. Late one night, Angela found her daughter working on a new presentation. "What's this?" Angela asked. Madison looked up, eyes shining. "A program to teach conflict resolution and self-advocacy to kids, starting in schools." Angela smiled broadly. "You're changing lives, Maddie." Madison nodded. "It all started with standing up for my seat. And now, that small act was creating ripples far beyond any airplane cabin." The following month, Horizon Airlines invited Madison to its National Leadership Summit in Dallas. Executives, staff, and stakeholders gathered for the unveiling of the Respect in the Skies initiative, a direct result of Madison's advocacy. As Madison stepped onto the stage in the packed auditorium, applause erupted. She wore a simple white blouse and navy blue slacks, standing tall behind the podium, her curly hair pulled back in a sleek bun. She began with a quiet smile. "It's been said that change starts with one voice, but I've learned that real change happens when people listen." The crowd fell silent, hanging on her every word. "When someone tried to take my seat, it wasn't just about a chair on a plane. It was about something deeper: assumptions, bias, entitlement. But instead of reacting with anger, I responded with facts, grace, and the belief that truth would speak for itself." She shared how the incident opened her eyes to how often people, especially kids, Black travelers, and women, are underestimated or dismissed. "I don't just want a seat on a plane," she said. "I want a seat at every table where decisions are made. And I want the same for others who feel unseen." By the time Madison stepped down, the room was on its feet. Executives shook her hand. Pilots, flight attendants, and customer service reps approached her with gratitude, telling her how the program was already reshaping their mindset. Later that afternoon, Jonathan Pierce, the CEO, held a private meeting with Madison and Angela. "We'd like to create something permanent with you," he said, "an official advisory role. Help us continue evolving, not just on paper, but in practice." Madison exchanged a look with Angela. "I'd like that, but only if we also launch a youth-led traveler council. Let's give young voices space to share their experiences and ideas." Jonathan grinned. "Done." That evening, back in her hotel suite, Madison took a call from her old school principal. He had seen the summit coverage and invited her to speak to students at her former middle school. She hesitated. "I haven't been back there since before everything." Angela encouraged her. "That's exactly why you should go. Let them see what's possible." A week later, Madison returned to her old school gymnasium, standing before rows of wide-eyed students. She told them about standing up for herself, not just in front of a crowd, but in moments no one else saw. "Sometimes the world will test you," she said, "and sometimes you'll feel like shrinking back, but you can always choose to speak up, even if your voice shakes." The kids erupted in applause. As she walked through the hallways she once called home, Madison smiled to herself. From airplane aisles to boardrooms and now classrooms, she wasn't just claiming her seat anymore. She was making room for others too. The impact of Madison's youth-led Traveler Council initiative grew rapidly. Horizon Airlines funded a pilot program that launched in 5 cities, each with student representatives aged 10 to 18. They shared stories, gave feedback on travel experiences, and brainstormed ways to make air travel safer, fairer, and more welcoming, especially for kids and marginalized groups. At the heart of it all was Madison, coordinating it between school, her tech company, and advocacy work. She barely had time to breathe, but somehow the work energized her. One morning, while reviewing progress reports over breakfast, Angela slid a newspaper across the table. The front page headline read, "Young CEO reshapes airline industry. Madison Brooks is building more than tech." Madison chuckled. "Guess I'm a little more than just SparkMind's founder now." Angela winked. "You're building bridges, not just apps." Madison's story inspired other industries to follow suit. A hotel chain launched a youth perspective panel, and a cruise line requested Madison's input on redesigning kid-friendly safety protocols. Despite her growing influence, Madison remained grounded. She insisted on responding to every letter she got from young fans, especially those who felt unseen or unheard. One day, she received a video message from a girl named Trinity in Detroit. She was 12, soft-spoken, and biracial. Trinity had recently been told to move from her upgraded seat on a train by an adult who didn't believe she belonged there. "I didn't know how to speak up," Trinity said, tears in her eyes. "But after watching your speech, I wish I had." Madison watched the message 3 times before calling Angela into her room. "I want to do something special," she said. "Not just for Trinity, but for kids like her everywhere." Within a week, she launched a new initiative under SparkMind called Claim Your Space. The campaign encouraged young people to embrace their voices and shared real stories of kids who stood up for themselves in everyday situations. On buses, in classrooms, at stores, in conversations. Madison filmed a powerful video, standing in a public park with planes flying overhead. "You don't have to be loud to be strong," she said into the camera. "You don't have to be older to be right. You just need to believe your place in this world matters, because it does." The video went viral in days. Soon, schools across the country began integrating Claim Your Space into their life skills and civics curriculum. Airline staff used the program in their training modules. Even parents messaged Madison, thanking her for giving their children courage. And in Detroit, Trinity got a surprise. Madison flew in and visited her school, standing beside her in front of her classmates. "I didn't speak up that day," Trinity admitted. "But now I know I'll never stay silent again." Madison placed a hand on her shoulder. "That's what claiming your space is all about." 3 years later, the name Madison Brooks was no longer just associated with SparkMind. She had become a national figure, a force for equity, innovation, and youth empowerment. At just 14, she had spoken at the United Nations, advised government officials on education reform, and helped airlines across the country implement policies that directly improved how young and marginalized travelers were treated. Her Claim Your Space initiative had expanded internationally, reaching students in over 20 countries. Still, she remained grounded. Angela made sure of that. "You still have dishes to do," her mom joked one night after dinner, handing her a sponge. Madison laughed. "Even global advocates wash plates." But in truth, Madison had changed the world, not because she sought fame, but because she responded to a moment of injustice with clarity and courage. A stolen seat had turned into a platform. A confrontation had become a calling. One crisp autumn morning, Madison walked into Horizon Airlines headquarters for the final Youth Advisory Board meeting of the year. As she entered the conference room, she was greeted by applause from executives, board members, and youth panelists alike. Jonathan Pierce, now semi-retired, stood at the front of the room. "Madison, 3 years ago, you were a kid asking for your rightful seat. Today, you've helped redesign how we treat every passenger, young, old, rich, poor, black, white. You made space, not just for yourself, but for thousands of others." Madison smiled, eyes glistening. "I just wanted to be treated fairly, and I didn't want anyone else to go through what I did." That afternoon, she boarded a flight to Chicago to visit a school where Claim Your Space had just been adopted. As she walked down the jet bridge, the flight attendant greeted her with a wide smile. "Miss Brooks, your seat is ready," she said. "And thank you for everything you've done." Madison took her seat, 1A, and looked out the window. A little boy across the aisle recognized her and whispered to his mom, "That's the girl from the airplane video." Madison smiled and gave him a wave. As the plane began to taxi, Angela, seated beside her, reached over. "You realize this all started because you refused to move." Madison chuckled. "I didn't just refuse to move. I chose to stand." Angela leaned her head back against the seat. "And because of that, the whole world shifted a little." As the jet lifted into the sky, Madison felt the quiet weight of everything she had built, not for the attention or headlines, but for the people who had never been heard, for the little girl afraid to speak, for the kid told to sit in the back, for the young voice waiting to be seen, and for herself. Because the truth was simple: when you claim your space, you help others find theirs too. Madison didn't just take back her seat. She claimed a place at the table for every young voice that's ever been dismissed, overlooked, or silenced. Her story proves that real power doesn't come from age or status. It comes from knowing your worth and refusing to be small. If this story moved you, drop a comment below and share your own stand your ground moment. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss more inspiring true stories like this. Together, we can turn small moments into powerful change.